She laughed at your joke, not because it was the funniest thing she'd ever heard, but because, for a moment, she felt comfortable around you. The conversation flowed effortlessly. She asked questions. She held eye contact a little longer than expected. When the evening ended, she smiled and said, "We should do this again." Most people would leave that moment feeling confident, but then the phone comes out. You check if she viewed your Instagram story. You wonder why she's online but hasn't replied. You debate whether sending another text will seem confident or desperate. Hours become days. Your emotions start reacting to tiny notifications, disappearing profile pictures, and 3 little typing dots that never turn into a message. Suddenly, the connection that once felt natural has become a competition for attention. And that's where everything changes, because the men who seem to attract the most interest aren't always the funniest, richest, or most conventionally attractive. Very often, they're simply the ones who refuse to chase, not because they're playing games, because they've learned something about human psychology that most people never discover. Before we dive in, take a second to subscribe. YouTube rarely recommends the same video twice, and if this helps you understand people a little better, we'd love to have you back. Now let's uncover what's really happening. Most people think chasing proves commitment. It feels logical. If you really want someone, you pursue them harder. You send another message after being left on read. You double text after a ghosting. You explain yourself after mixed signals. You become more available after they become less available. From the outside, it looks like persistence. Psychologically, something very different is happening. Helen Fisher, who spent decades studying romantic attraction, found that uncertainty often intensifies emotional attention. Our brains don't simply value what is available. They become fascinated by what feels meaningful yet uncertain. That doesn't mean creating confusion on purpose. It means attraction cannot grow if one person removes all mystery before the other has invested emotionally. Think about dating apps. Someone matches with 20 people before breakfast. Another 50 profiles appear before lunch. Everyone is trying to prove why they deserve attention. Everyone is chasing. And when everyone is shouting, the quiet person suddenly becomes impossible to ignore. But here's what almost nobody realizes. The man who doesn't chase isn't withdrawing from women. He's investing somewhere else. Watch someone who's genuinely fulfilled. He finishes work and goes to the gym. He calls his family. He works on a business idea. He learns a language. He disappears for hours because he's living a life that existed before someone entered it. His attention isn't scarce because he's pretending. It's scarce because it's already committed. That difference changes everything. Now consider the opposite. A man meets someone on Friday. By Sunday, every decision revolves around her. His mood depends on whether she likes his latest photo. He rereads voice notes, searching for hidden meanings. He checks TikTok, hoping she reposted something about relationships. Without realizing it, she's slowly becoming the center of his emotional world. Here's the irony. The more he makes someone responsible for his happiness, the heavier the relationship begins to feel. People can sense emotional dependence long before it's ever spoken aloud, not through magic, through behavior, the speed of replies, the need for reassurance, the constant availability, the anxiety hidden inside ordinary conversations. John Gottman spent years studying successful relationships, and one pattern appeared again and again. Healthy relationships aren't built by eliminating independence. They're built by balancing connection with individuality. Two complete people. Not two people desperately trying to complete each other. That's a subtle difference. But it changes how every interaction feels. Then something unexpected happens. The man who doesn't chase often gets accused of being mysterious, sometimes even emotionally unavailable. But mystery and absence aren't the same thing. A healthy man isn't difficult to reach because he's manipulating someone. He's simply not rearranging his entire identity around every romantic possibility. He replies because he wants to, not because anxiety demands it. He plans dates, but he also keeps promises to himself. He enjoys affection, but he doesn't negotiate away his boundaries just to avoid rejection. That kind of emotional stability feels rare today because modern dating trains people to measure worth through constant validation, likes, followers, story views, heart reactions. Even relationships become public performances. If someone doesn't post enough couple pictures, people assume something is wrong. If someone takes 3 hours to answer, theories begin. Our phones have created an environment where silence feels louder than words. And that's where many people lose themselves. But psychology discovered something fascinating. Daniel Kahneman showed how our minds naturally create stories to explain uncertainty. Someone doesn't reply. Instead of saying, "They're probably busy," the brain invents a movie. "They're losing interest. They found someone better. I ruined everything." Most of those stories aren't reality. They're simply our minds trying to remove uncertainty. Men who don't chase become comfortable leaving some questions unanswered. Not forever. Just long enough to let reality speak, instead of anxiety. Think about that. Here's where attraction becomes counterintuitive. Confidence isn't convincing someone you're valuable. It's behaving as though your value doesn't disappear when one person says no. That's why rejection affects different people differently. One person gets ghosted and immediately questions everything about themselves. Another feels disappointed, reflects for a moment, and continues living. Same event, different identity. That wasn't luck. It was psychology. Here's what makes this bigger than just one relationship. The way someone dates often mirrors the way they see themselves. If your identity depends on being chosen, every unanswered message feels like evidence you're not enough. If your identity comes from your values, friendships, purpose, and self-respect, dating becomes exploration rather than survival. This is where attachment styles quietly enter the picture. Sue Johnson spent years explaining how our need for connection shapes adult relationships. People with anxious attachment often experience uncertainty as danger. Silence feels personal. Distance feels permanent. Every delayed reply becomes emotionally amplified. Meanwhile, people with secure attachment usually assume goodwill until proven otherwise. They communicate, they ask, they don't immediately catastrophize. That difference alone changes countless relationships, and most people never notice. Modern loneliness makes this even harder. We have more ways to connect than ever. Yet many people eat dinner alone while watching couples online appear endlessly happy. Career pressure leaves little energy for emotional intimacy. Therapy has become more common because emotional burnout has become more common too. Many situationships don't fail because attraction disappears. They fail because two exhausted people expect another human being to solve problems that began long before they met. That's a heavy responsibility for anyone. Then there's social validation. Imagine two men. One enters every conversation hoping to impress. The other enters curious about the person sitting across from him. The first constantly wonders, "Do they like me?" The second quietly asks, "Do we genuinely fit together?" The questions seem almost identical. They're not. One seeks approval. The other seeks compatibility. Esther Perel often reminds us that desire grows where there is freedom, individuality, and curiosity. Relationships suffocate when people become projects instead of partners. No one enjoys feeling managed. Everyone enjoys feeling understood. Aron became famous for studying how emotional closeness develops. His research suggested that intimacy often grows through mutual vulnerability rather than perfect performance. In other words, people rarely fall for flawless masks. They connect with authentic humans. Ironically, the man who doesn't chase is often more willing to be honest. He doesn't need every interaction to succeed, so he's free to speak naturally. He can laugh at himself, admit mistakes, say, "I don't think we're looking for the same thing," and walk away peacefully if necessary. That calmness creates emotional safety, not because it guarantees romance, because it removes desperation. Now imagine two conversations. In the first, every sentence feels like an audition. Every pause creates panic. Every joke is designed to impress. In the second, both people are relaxed. They tease each other, share embarrassing stories, disagree respectfully. Hours disappear without either person trying to manufacture chemistry. Which one feels more attractive? Exactly. Chemistry often appears when people stop forcing it. This is where Brené Brown's work becomes surprisingly relevant. Real connection requires vulnerability. But vulnerability isn't begging someone to stay. It's showing who you are without trying to control their response. That's courage. And courage doesn't chase. It reveals itself. Then it waits. There's another reason men who don't chase often seem magnetic. They're paying attention. Instead of obsessing over whether they're being liked, They notice how the other person treats waiters, handles conflict, speaks about former partners, responds to disappointment, and communicates during difficult moments. They're evaluating character, not just attraction, because attraction starts relationships. Character sustains them. Gary Lewandowski's work on healthy relationships repeatedly points towards something simple yet profound. The best relationships help people become better versions of themselves, not smaller ones, not more anxious ones, not people who constantly monitor read receipts. Better. If pursuing someone requires abandoning your peace, your friendships, your ambitions, or your self-respect, the cost may already be too high. That doesn't mean never making the first move. It doesn't mean pretending not to care. It certainly doesn't mean becoming emotionally cold. Healthy love still requires effort. Initiating conversations, planning thoughtful dates, expressing affection, working through conflict, choosing each other repeatedly. The difference is motivation. Chasing comes from fear of losing someone. Pursuing comes from genuine interest while accepting that not every connection is meant to last. Those look similar from the outside. Inside, they're worlds apart. So here's the bigger picture. Remember the man from the beginning, staring at his phone, trying to decode every silence. His biggest mistake wasn't sending one extra text. It was believing another person's attention determined his worth. The men who don't chase have usually learned a quieter lesson. Attention is wonderful. Love is meaningful. Connection is worth protecting. But none of those things can replace a strong relationship with yourself. Ironically, that's what makes healthy relationships possible in the first place. When two people choose each other instead of needing each other to feel complete, conversations become lighter, boundaries become easier, trust grows naturally, and attraction stops feeling like a performance. It starts feeling like peace. Because in the end, the goal was never to become someone women couldn't resist. The goal was to become someone who no longer had to abandon himself just to be noticed. And that's the kind of confidence no text message, dating app, or social media algorithm can ever give or take away. If this helped you understand relationships a little better, subscribe and join us. Share this with someone who needs to hear it. And until next time, keep learning what really drives human connection.